Kia ora koutou, ko Tim Watkins tēnei. Ko manawa tū te awa ko Ruahine te maunga, but I've been in Auckland for a very long time, and I run the podcast team at RNZ. Thank you for those who are taking the time to stay. Hope you have a good evening to those who need to go. Heather Croall is the director of this film. It's her father that we've just seen the story of, and she's with us here tonight. Heather, come on up. Nā mai, haere mai, welcome. Thank you for sharing your father with us tonight. Yeah, have a seat.
Thank you for screening the film.
You're most welcome. Look, I kind of want to start just by saying fathers, eh?
Yes, that's
because
it. It's for all the fathers.
Yeah, I'm right in imagining that when people talk to you about the film and see the film, that you get a lot of transference and projection of people, their own love, their own frustrations, their own feelings about their father.
Yeah, it's probably the most common thing people say to me after the screening is that it made them think about their own father, which I love because, I mean, obviously it's about my father as I was making the film, but I always wanted it to be a film that was able to transcend being just about my dad, but also being a story that would resonate with people who think about their own relationships with their own parents and also the legacy that people leave and the different, everyone's got a story, and I just happen to have a lot of little footage that I filmed of Dad over the years.
It's amazing footage. There is so much. You must have just been filming constantly through your life.
That's a sign of a great editor. I actually didn't have very much footage, so she makes it look like I had a lot of footage, particularly the opening, I think, of the film when it looks like there's lots of old footage and when I was filming him with my film school projects and things, or high school, that was just, she would find just all these little nuggets of little golden pieces within amongst a load of other stuff that was not my father. And she was an incredible editor. So her name's Tanya Nemi, and she's an amazing editor that, I mean, I finished this film 7 years after my father had died.
Well, that was what I was going to ask. He obviously died at the end of 2013.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to feel able to actually start making it?
So I was editing it myself for a long time, and I kept on asking Tanya if she would be able to edit it, and she said, I would love to, but of course at that point I was really self-funding the film and crowdfunding, and she was already booked for years, and she's one of Australia's best editors. She's edited all of Rolf de Heer's films and won many awards, and so she was often booked for years ahead. And it was only so I'd been working on the edit for a long time. I probably had an edit down to a few hours, and then in the lockdown, April 2020, she called me from Melbourne and said, did you ever finish that film? And I said, no. And she said, well, I'm in Melbourne in the lockdown and everything's been cancelled, so I've got 12 weeks if you send me the drives. Silver
linings, eh?
So, yeah, and I was in Adelaide and she was in Melbourne, and we virtually never... we're quite old-fashioned. We know each other from film school days, so we had a good connection. But we weren't Zooming or connecting. We'd sometimes email, sometimes telephone, but not a lot of communication. We'd just send messages to each other. We'd have a phone call. She'd edit till late in the night, send me overnight, and I'd get up early in the morning. Before work and watch the edit and just be amazed at what she'd done and how she'd brought out all this gold and found a way of really telling a story that was, it was my father, but it was also a town about, I always wanted Whyalla to be a character in the town, and I hadn't sort of really been able to nail that the way Tanya did that. she really brought the town, because my father loved the town, and
You could tell.
yeah, and it was there's only ever really negative stories about that town, so it was important for us to make a story that loved the town.
So, and you were doing it at a distance, which must have been quite a challenge.
Well, there was that meme going around in lockdown of like editors before COVID lockdown on their own in a room, editors after COVID lockdown on their own in a room. So, it's like, I think, Tanya says to me, you gave me a gift because it got me through the lockdown, but obviously she gave me the gift because, she finished the film, and it would not be finished if it wasn't for that.
How long since you've seen that film?
I actually haven't watched it for quite a while because it premiered in the Adelaide Film Festival in October, which Adelaide Film Festival is a wonderful festival that has an investment fund, and they actually helped me with money to finish the film. And so I hadn't watched it for a while. And
so how did it feel seeing your dad again?
Yeah, there's always a few areas that I worried about how much we could. I guess when Dad was really frail at the end, and we're dressing him, and when he gets taken by the ambulance and stuff, there's a few times when I did wonder whether we should keep it in, and are we going too far with that. But I think something that a lot of people told me after the screenings in Adelaide was that they were really grateful that I had kept that in, because so rarely do we see that kind of close to death moment in our life, and actually it's something we all, a lot of us, if we nurse one of our relatives or whatever, we see that.
It's familiar.
And it's, and there's a quiet dignity about someone who knows that their days are numbered, and so I had quite a lot of people tell me after the screenings in Adelaide that they thought that was really important that I'd kept that in, because it reminded them, as you say, it was familiar, it reminded them of nursing their mother or grandmother or...
And the scene when the ambulance comes, that was the last time he was at home?
Yeah.
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 Is your mum still with us?
Yes.
How's she doing?
She's doing pretty well. I mean, she did one interview with me, so there's only one interview of her in there, and we tried to sort of use as much as possible. And then every time I asked her if she, over the times, I said, can we do another interview? But she just didn't. She didn't have it in her to do another one. Right. So she did that one interview, which was not long after Dad died, a couple of years maybe, and then she didn't watch it at all when I was editing it, and Tanya was editing it, and I kept saying to her, like, it was getting closer to be obvious that it was going to be in the film festival, and I was like, Mum, I think you need to watch it. Tell me what you think. And she didn't want to watch it or say anything with it. She didn't want to have any input on the edit. And about 2 days before the film screened at the film festival, which she was coming to, she watched it, and she actually. She was really, very she loved seeing him alive and, bringing him back. Because I think that's the thing about this film is it's like you're invited to hang out with Dad for an hour and a half and listen to his, he's got such a, great sort of approach to life. And so I think, she just loved seeing that. She found it hard to see those very frail moments at the end. Yeah. Yeah, she's not sure she'll ever watch it again for those ending parts. Yeah. I actually learnt a lot about my dad in this. I didn't know half of this stuff when I launched when I started to ask midwives if they would interview and tell me. I didn't know anything about the breech things or,
He clearly had a gift with his fingers.
Yeah, and they all kept saying the same thing. Right. And, so I learned a lot about my dad, so it's pretty lucky, I guess, in that way that, everybody wants to be able to tell the story and then actually hear all these things about my father that I had no idea about. And then, just there was a lot of lucky things like discovery, like finding a lot of the old letters and having little bits of footage of like his retirement, and so that we just kept finding little pieces as we went on.
One thing you obviously knew about in growing up, because you were part of it, was the trees. And so how many do you reckon he planted?
I think it's at least 10,000.
Staggering.
Yeah, it could be more. He always said it was about 6,000 or so, but that was Dad. He would always play it down. Oh, I hardly delivered any babies and I hardly planted any trees.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned those two things, because it's hard to miss, isn't it? The correlation between the two, right? It's planting a seed of new life. There's something about the trees and the babies that seem to be... I mean, what was it about him that had this whole sense of new life to him? Yeah,
it's a film about birth and death and life and well, Dad, he was a deeply philosophical person, and I mean, as I said in the film, we found out much later in our life when we were adults that Dad had trained to be a priest and lived, in a very, and I sort of feel like he served this remote town almost in a priestly way, by sort of just being in that town for 40 years and. Now there's no doctors virtually live there, no specialists anyway.
So tell us a bit about Whyalla, the character.
Yeah.
How is it now? Is it? It's you. I mean, I love the story, the great twist at the end when the solar.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that great?
Yeah.
That after all these letters and the settlers banging your heads against town hall, then they go, oh, there's an idea. Let's put up a solar array. Is the solar working? Is the steel plant still working?
The solar industry's going well, but the steel industry is really struggling, and there's a lot of there's just constant problems that it's on its knees and then it comes back and then it's on its knees, and it's a tough. Obviously, most steel towns in the Western world have closed down around the world, so there's not many left, and so they're hoping. That there will be intervention, but as my father always says, that if Whyalla was in a marginal seat, it would have got a lot more money. And the Premier actually came to see the film at Adelaide Film Festival, and
did he take a hint?
He came up to me after, he goes, he's right about that. He's right. Well, it should have been in a marginal seat. No, it's... Are
there jobs though there? Are people...
No, it's very much... It's a shadow of what it was when I was there. 69
nationalities when you were growing up. It was obviously a real immigrant town.
Oh yeah, I think when it first it was in a boom. When it first came out, the building of that enormous steelworks attracted immigrants from all over the world. And I mean, often when I do these Q&As, there's actually midwives and doctors who worked with him in the audience, and I have no idea if that is the case here, but maybe not so when it's so far. But there's the stories that come to me afterwards. There's just endless stories of the way. I mean, one of the midwives told me that one day Dad said to him, "Well, can you sign this bit of paper, blank bit of paper?" And then the next week there was a letter in the Whyalla News from her, which obviously my father had written, because he was constantly writing letters, so he was always trying to make all of us sign the bottom of the letters and make it look like they weren't always from
the editor,
him.
Yeah. Like, oh, not Croall again. I'm not going to publish this thing. We'll see whether anybody in the audience wants to ask the question in a second. But I was curious from a craft point of view. Yeah. You often teach someone starting a feature or a podcast or a film, give the audience a reason to care. And so you're desperate to try and find the character a place in history or some bigger saga to be part of. Now, I get that Whyalla's a character and so forth. But you're not trying too hard on that front. You just kick straight into the film. Here's this guy and here's his family, and it's just him. You're not trying to make it more than it is. And I'm curious about that, whether you worried people would that's just somebody's dad who I don't know. Why should I care?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I totally worried about that, and I still worry about it. But it's... I think when you can make a personal film work on a way that it becomes more universal and can chime with this experience that we've all had across our own lives, and there is also that goes from the personal into the political and back into the personal. That is, I mean, obviously, I think it's a hard thing to do a film like this, because you do start to think, why am I bothering about this? But I also thought that it captures a way of living that is kind of disappearing, and it's a way of living that I think a lot of people of my father's generation had.
It is. It's something. I mean, I recognise my father's generation, which is the same in that the Volvo that keeps going forever and the glasses, and just the stuff that doesn't matter. You know, that actually what matters is the family and the town and all this peripheral stuff.
And all the waste not, want not, and the recycling and stuff. I think it's something that was quite, strong in his generation. And so I was aware of trying to capture that as well, and to capture that, a way of living that is kind of not really around. And maybe is having a resurgence.
Yeah, I think there's something distinctive about that generation that you can see in that. Has anybody got any questions? Because it's a great chance. We've got Heather here as a privilege with us. Gentleman in the front row.
Hi, Heather. Beautiful film. Thank you so much for that. That really made, as I'm sure everybody here, it made them think about my dad and all of that. So thanks. A couple of things. Firstly, I thought it was also about, personally, about a time that will never be back again. I mean, some of his comments about, sort of, what was it to do with female genitalia standing straight? I mean, you'd be arrested
stand up
for that
straight.
These days. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shoulders back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I wondered a couple of things. The music, firstly, was fantastic. That was whoever was responsible for that. That was lovely. But also, when did you decide? Did you make a decision about the use of cartoons? Because that seemed to be a very kind of, it was just perfect the way you used cartoons as a bridge. When I've been in a similar position. When you want a bridge from, there's no film lying around of that image.
Yeah, so when I realised, so first of all, with the music, like at the very opening of the film, Dad puts on, we're playing music with him, and we put on the Louis Armstrong, and that was a very typical scene of our lives with Dad, who just loved jazz, and especially 20s and 30s, like old trad jazz, and then. When the lockdown happened in April 2020, a wonderful musician, Vicky Falconer from London, she's originally Australian, but she'd been living in London, and she moved back to Australia because she'd fallen in love with a guy in Adelaide, and I just met her in the cafe, and it was amazing because I knew she could do that sort of music. It was her, that's what she could do. And I'd been really worrying who could do this, who could play with, but stay true to the trad jazz stuff. And so I was very lucky that Vicky Falconer came back and she did it, and she just did such a great job. And she had beautiful musicians come in and do the recording. So I was really lucky there. And also to sing you the song of the fish of the sea, we saw him singing that at the beginning, which was something he sang, and she knew someone who could do us a rendition for that, which was really nice. But in terms of using the animation, so I worked with a beautiful, the animator who did this from film school days, and I just called him, and I knew that he'd love the look of my dad's face because it's just the way he draws is just great for Dad. And so I told him of the whole idea that there were scenes like me remembering planting trees with Dad, and when I was young, and him getting the seeds and things, which
dancing across the road,
exist, yes, and always clicking his heels as he literally always did, and And also then when we realised about the letters when we realised we're going to use the letters more, that's when we started to, bring Greg's animations in even more. So we started out doing, this is all because of the way fundraising and budgets work with Doco. You don't have, just cobbling along as you go. So the first few things he did full colour for me. But then as we were going along, he just started to do sketchy stuff. And then actually we just decided we really liked that anyway. And I didn't have enough money to keep paying him to do the full colour. But it was fun. I really liked the black and white sketchiness of it. So I was really happy to stay with that. And Greg was, he was like, well, your dad's face is just perfect for a cartoonist to draw. And so... he used to whip them up quite quickly. If I'd just send him the letter, and then he would come back with some scenes drawn up of the letters, and it was again, that was in lockdown. So again, we never saw each other during he'd just send it to me on email, or it was everyone was in isolation when we made the final edit.
It's a great lockdown experience. Are there any other questions? Thank you.
I think just one other thing that makes me think as well, like when you were just that, in terms of how to approach and what made me even make the film, but it was really a lot about dealing with my grief as well. So on one hand, I wanted to film because it was a way of just holding on to him. But then to make the film, I think I was very close with my dad. So I think if I hadn't made the film, I just don't think I'd have dealt with the grief as well as, it's with you every day. But I've dealt with it a lot better having been able to make this story.
How do you feel him in your life now?
Well, he's... Dad was, he never wasted a minute. If he wasn't building tables, he was putting stones up on walls or, building bookcases and, just everything. He just was in wood and stone and planting trees. And so I like to be, I like to make sure that I'm trying to make the most of every minute.
Be doing.
And he always said he wanted to be useful, and I think I want to be useful as well. And I always I like to think about his work. He had a very strong work ethic, and he had very he was very creative, and so I always think about those things. He's in my mind with everything I do.
Yeah. Anything else? I mean, he was on call a lot. On one hand, you get the impression that you spent a lot of time with him, but then at the same time, you were at boarding school and he's on call.
And often in the hospital with all in his dungarees, as he used to call them, his overalls. But I think I spent a lot of time with him out planting, and so that was a special time that we had all the time. And then, where he sat in the table at that long table that he made, that was just his place. That's where he sat all the time, and rolled his cigarettes and drank red wine and read books and loved to tell. He just loved talking. He loved to be in conversation, and he was a great conversationalist and very fun. And so I spent a lot of time with him at that table.
That's magic. Any last questions before we wrap it up?
One at the back there.
Oh, this is what I've got. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much. I really was moved quite deeply by your film. And I was curious if anyone in your family is continuing on the legacy of the tree planting, and if you've thought of perhaps starting an association or something, and for the film to promote funding to go towards tree planting. There's quite a few of his friends carry on the trees now.
he was planting those trees. As you saw, he was very frail. At some of the trees he's planted, I was thinking when we were planting them, who's going to look after these? Who's going to water these trees? But they have all, they've all survived, and a lot of his friends have carried on that tradition. In Whyalla, his friends up there, and there's been the MP in Whyalla has been working towards getting a whole tree planting activity going in Whyalla, sort of in my father's name, which I think, obviously we'll be behind that. There's a whole wonderful organisation in Australia called Trees for Life, and my father was doing it before Trees for Life really existed, as far as I understand. But now you can go. A lot of people used to come to our house and knock on the door and get seedlings, like for the hockey, planting around the hockey oval or the football oval or something. It was just like free trees for anyone who came to get them. But now, there's wonderful organisations in Australia, and I've spoken with a couple of the people who run the Adelaide chapter of it about, we've had a screening, doing fundraising there, but I haven't really got bigger plans, but it's just smaller things that we're doing with the MP in Whyalla and also with Trees for Life.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, Heather, we'll call that a night and say thank you very much. Let's just say, can we just have a round of applause for Heather and for her dad?
Thank you.
Thank you for coming over and joining us all this way from Australia, especially at these difficult times. So look...
And thank you, Doc Edge, for inviting my film, and thank you, Tim, for a great Q&A. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening, and enjoy your long weekend.